Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chasing a Murder. And today we're going to do an update on one of the cases that I've been following over the past 3 years. Oftentimes, she's referred to as the Doomsday Mom, Lori Vallow Daybell. Her kids went missing in 2019. She claimed they were safe, but she couldn't prove where they were. The state gave her a certain amount of time to come up with the kids, in which she didn't, which ended up basically saying there's more going on than what they're saying. And boy, was there. Many of you who have followed this case know exactly what I'm talking about, and that they found those two missing kids, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, in the backyard of her fifth husband, Chad Daybell, in Rexburg, Idaho. And no, they weren't playing on the playground. They were under the earth. They were zombies. Zombies. In order to get rid of them, well, you had to destroy their body and release that evil spirit. This means that they took the lives of these two innocent children, and there was also two adults and several other attacks attached to this case. You had Lori Vallow's husband, Charles Vallow, who was deemed a zombie, who was shot by her brother. They claimed self-defense. And then you have Chad Daybell, Lori's fifth husband. His wife, Tammy Daybell, just suddenly was found dead in her bedroom. We learned that this was suspicious deaths and now deemed homicides. It took us years to get to this point, to where we would see both Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell see their day in trial, and the families and friends involved with this case would receive the justice they deserve. Here we are, April 2023. Lori Vallow was first to go to court. We're going to talk about the trial. This video actually can be a little graphic, and if you cannot handle that sort of thing, just make sure that you turn it off when I give you the warning in a short time. I don't know exactly what time mark until I get there, but it's going to be not too far from now. So far, people that have testified are Brandon Boudreaux, which is Lori Vallow's niece's ex-husband. He was attacked, or suspected to be attacked, by Alex Cox and Lori Vallow. Thankfully, he survived. Then you have Detective Hermosillo, who'll give graphic detail on how JJ and Tylee were found. Kay Woodcock, the grandmother of JJ. She had also been deemed a zombie or dark spirit. And one of the other witnesses we're going to talk about is one of the big witnesses that actually made a difference in this case. Thankfully, she come forward, and that would be Melanie Gibb. Melanie Gibb was considered to be one of Lori's best friends, and that they had just recently met through similar supports for the end days or preparedness and biblical doctrines. Also, they were both LDS members. Lori Vallow believed that she was meant to be the new prophet of this religion, and she believed that Moroni, who visited Joseph Smith, the original creator or prophet of this religion, and showed him where the gold plates were, was now contacting her and telling her that women are now the new prophet leaders. Some of the narratives involved with this case will try to mislead you and tell you that Chad Daybell is over Lori Vallow's sudden transformation, but that's not true. Lori Vallow was getting into a lot of this before Chad Daybell ever come along. Once she met Chad Daybell, it was safe to say that she kind of indoctrinated Chad Daybell and started leading him awry, and together the two come up with some very crazy ideas. Like Melanie Gibb had said, this was like wood and gasoline. And these weird teachings, basically, that was the match. And two, well, you have one nobody, just a mom, just trying to do her daily things at the temple, and an author publisher for fictional LDS stories. They changed the world. There are so many deaths over the years that surround Lori Vallow. Some of them continue to raise questions of whether they were natural or not. But because most people didn't even catch on to what Lori Vallow was capable of doing until way later, well, it was just too late to really investigate. People like Joseph Ryan and Stacy Cox. I'm not going to go into much detail about Kay Woodcock. Most people are more than aware of who she is. But just a quick overview. Kay Woodcock and Larry Woodcock, which you'll hear their name if you're watching this trial, were the original and very blood connected to J.J. Vallow. They were the grandparents. Her son actually had the baby. They had some problems, so the grandparents had to take care of the baby. And on stand, Kay explained how, it come that Lori and Charles, her brother and his wife, Lori Vallow, adopted JJ. For them, it was a no-brainer. They wanted to keep JJ because they loved him so much, but also they had to weigh out what was best for JJ because they're older. They wouldn't be able to do the things that a person that had better health with a younger wife and younger family could do. So they give up their rights to JJ to her brother, Charles Vallow, and his wife, Lori Vallow. There may be background noise here and there, guys. But Lori Vallow tried to say that these guys were not the natural grandparents of J.J. Vallow now that she had adopted them, and that was trying to make it to where they could not be in the courtroom during trial. But that did not go over. So thank God Judge Boyce did not allow that. So on April 10th of 2023, the jury was picked. They were ready. In courtroom 400, Judge Boyce walked in to the court where Rob Wood, the prosecutor, and Archibald, the defense, were with their clients or the people that they represent. They began their opening statements. Prosecutors basically said in a nutshell that these people use zombies and dark energy combined with energy work as an excuse to murder 4 innocent people. Of course, the defense is going to try to say, this is not who she is. This is not the type of woman that she was. But we learned, if we look back to 2006, that Lori had murderous thoughts and tendencies along with her brother Alex Cox. In fact, Alex Cox spent some time in jail for attacking Lori Vallow's third husband, Joe Ryan, which is the father of Tylee Ryan. He tasered him, and Joe survived. He was able to run, flee, and get help. According to witnesses or people that knew Lori, they say that it was an attempt to kill Joe Ryan. And here we are now, today, and Lori is accused of being part of 4 other murders that happened in 2019. Her own daughter, her adopted son, her husband, and her new husband's wife. But there were several people involved with this case that was in this circle that were wondering, what the heck, how are they not behind bars? Some of the names that I'll mention is Zulema, Melanie Boudreaux, Alex Cox, Melanie Gibb, Christina, Nicole, and Serena. And here's why I say this. See, these murders, they happen back to back. There is no way that these people didn't know that they were taking part or creating a reason for such murders to take place under their support to this, their group leaders of the 144,000, the Church of the Firstborn, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. And what dumbfounded me the most is, when the kids come up missing, we're hearing that none of them really contacted police, that the kids were disappearing or the adults' deaths that were so suspicious until police come knocking on their door. Because now their butt was on the line and they're like, hey, wait a minute, this is okay until it's not coming down on me. We'll talk more about that later. Detective Hermosillo actually took the stand on April 11th of 2023. And he talked about November 18th of 2019 when Gilbert police have a warrant to get the GPS information off the Jeep that they had that used to belong to Chad Daybell, but also they suspected that this Jeep took part in several attacks. One being Brandon Boudreaux, Lori Vallow's niece's husband, and the other Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy Daybell. According to the detective, he said this is the first time that Rexburg would ever hear the name Tylee or JJ. And that on November 25th of 2019, they get a call from Ryan Pillar. And it's around November 26th that they're really concerned about JJ's whereabouts. Ryan informs them, we need to find out where JJ is. The grandmother wants a welfare check. Well, Rexburg police say, well, we're going to wait until the next day, November 26th, and then we'll go early in the morning to check on them. They head over to 565 Pioneer and head to the complex 175, which is Lori Vallow's apartment. They went through a lot, which we'll go a lot into more details in the series if I ever get to finish that. They talked to Chad Daybell, Alex Cox, and eventually Lori Vallow, and they don't get the answers that they feel comfortable with. Eventually, Lori will say that JJ is with Melanie Gibb, but no one has seen or heard from JJ since around September 22nd. Here it is, November 26th. Long story short, they believe that they are lying. Lori is lying about everything. Then the prosecutor goes in a deeper timeline on the search for JJ. And here's where you might want to turn it off. So he asked about how JJ was found. And they said, well, after going to Lori's apartment multiple times, they finally get a search warrant. They find out that the apartment's empty. They're gone. Lori and Chad had left quickly. They noticed that they had left behind toys, medication believed to belong to JJ. And the most shocking is what they found in the garage. When they go in the garage, they locate several guns, silencers, and army knives, several empty magazines, and this is all at the garage of 175, so Lori's unit. At the time, Melanie Boudreaux, Lori Vallow's niece, was living in 174, and Lori Vallow's brother, Alex Cox, while he was living in 107. But that apartment was vacant and there was absolutely nothing there. They discover during a search a rental agreement for a storage unit signed by Lori Ryan, not Lori Vallow, not Lori Daybell, because she had just been recently married to Chad Daybell. And they found that it was this storage unit was C52. They get a warrant. They go in there and they discover what they call a ghillie suit, which is supposedly like a camouflage suit. They discover a few bags that belong to the kids, some clothing, some photo albums, blankets, but they also discover some weapons. At some point during this time, Lori is writing down notes in court. She is seen smiling and having a good time. A lot of people are frowning down at her for this because this is a very serious case. After all, there's 2 kids that were found mangled and deceased, and her new hubby's backyard. I believe that it's a tactic to convince people that she's in, and that I thought she watched the Johnny Depp case, and that's what she was trying to portray, because she is she's a leader but yet a follower at the same time. So here we go. The court moves forward to the point where they talk about how the kids are found. According to several reporters and several people in the court, this was a very tough time. As the detective talked about the weapons that he found, you had to wonder, why would they need so many weapons, especially considering that they don't even know how some of these victims their lives were taken. We know that Alex Cox, he enjoyed shooting guns. He liked going to the shooting range, and there was a ton of ammo to prove that. Right before they started talking about how the kids were found, and they decided to use the exhibits of, what the kids looked like, how they were found, Lori appeared to be visibly very upset. She stood in the courtroom with her arms crossed. Her attorneys were fighting so that she could leave the courtroom while they went over all this evidence. But, Boyce said, you know what? I reject this. Lori would have to remain in the courtroom, thank God. And I wondered what you guys would think about that. And there are so many theories as to why Lori was acting this way. Some of you believe that she didn't want to see the reality of what happened. After all, Lori Vallow believes that her children are living their next life, that they are okay. Some of you were believing that this was her attempt of showing the jury that she couldn't look at this as an attempt to make her look emotional and actually making a connection with the children so that they would feel sorry for her. Didn't matter, because she had to stay in the courtroom, thank God. Anyways, the detective goes on about how they excavated Lori's own children from the backyard of her newlywed husband. According to people that were in the court, they said she looked down and refused to look at the pictures that were shown. However, a lot of people believe that she had to at least listen to what they unearthed of her deceased children. Now remember, JJ was one of the last zombies, so they say. I mean, we've heard different opinions on this. But according to Melanie Gibb, JJ turned into a dark zombie around mid-September of 2019. Tylee, on the other hand, she did not get along with her mother as much as she'd like to make it seem as though they did. Both of them were good at hiding the reality because they were constantly bickering. She was deemed a dark zombie in the spring, sometime in the spring, between February and June of 2019. And it was around June 9th of 2020 that the police show up at Chad Daybell's house with a warrant in hand. This day was heavenly sweet for those of you who follow this case, and I'll never forget the emotions that I read in the comments. Chad was asleep when they got there. His son answered the door, but they made the son go wake Chad up, so Chad had a pleasant surprise. The detective testified that basically detectives were there with shovels in their hand and ready to dig up his backyard. Just a reminder, Lori had already been arrested and was in jail during this excavation. Oddly enough, she happened to call during this time when the investigators are in the backyard. They have these tents set up all over the place, and they're finding some very sad truth. Chad Daybell sat in the car and watched over his shoulder as the lovers talked on the phone, and he watched his world get turned upside down. Tammy Daybell had a pet cemetery on that property, and that's one of the locations that they find one of the kids. At the time, it was Tylee Ryan, but they didn't know. This is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from the red barn on the property. Investigators got down on their hands and knees and began to dig in this moist area, the detective said in court. They could smell decomposition seeping into their nose. Something that many of the investigators will say during their testimonies, that this is a smell that you never get used to it, but you know what it is when you smell it. They knew they were digging in the right spot, and they said they weren't sure who it was at first, but they kept on digging. They kept on pulling up bits and pieces of someone. They find bones that start to pick up or stick out through the ground. They find a green bucket, and later to confirm they had charred organs and other charred human tissue inside. At some point, they said detectives were able to kind of guess this could most likely be Tylee. They find globs of flesh, which is falling apart. The smell was so bad that they would have to take breaks in between the excavation. Eventually, they find a partial skull. There was a second spot that the investigators were interested in, and it was based off of GPS information that they got off of Chad and Alex Cox's phone. The pond and the oak tree on Chad Daybell's property, not too far away from Tylee or the Red Barn, they find another body. It's wrapped in black bags. How they located this exact spot was based on the fact that the grass was shorter in that area compared to the rest of the area. They actually knock off the first layer of the earth. Underneath that, they discover several rocks. And one detective said that they noticed that undeniable stench seep through once again. It told them that it was most likely a body and that they were in the right spot. Okay. So they go deeper and they find paneling. Underneath that paneling, they see a plastic bag. And at some point, they open the bag enough that they're able to see a crown of a child's head. And the hair resembled that of JJ. And just like that, Lori and Chad have destroyed another set of lives with their horrible actions and deeds. While Chad Daybell remained in the car, it was obvious and most likely known that he knew what they would discover digging in his backyard. And because this, the reason for this is based off a phone call he had with Lori Vallow, the fact that he was looking intently over his right shoulder and that he was in his car. Chad drives quickly, they say at a decent speed, away from the house. But there were police set up all over, prepared for that moment just in case. They stop him, then throw some fancy police jewelry on his arms and escort him to the police car. I'll never forget that day. Nobody who followed this case will ever forget that day, because we had been waiting and waiting for police to finally make that arrest. According to the investigator that was on the stand, he said that DNA was discovered on a pickaxe and a shovel that was located in Chad's barn. So this is the same barn where the kids are found next to, as well as police track based off their GPS on their phones, Alex and Chad being located when the kids go missing or they're last seen. The public that is at this courtroom and in the overflow rooms, well, they were very emotional. They say that the jury, they didn't show much emotion. However, the public, the reporters who have closely followed this story, and you can't help, no matter how much you try to detach yourself from not being involved with the families and the kids in this case, because you followed it for so long, it's as if you're part of their family. Looking at these photos and hearing this detective's testimony had everyone in a bad place. It would be carried forever in their minds and probably, wreak havoc. Luckily, Kay Woodcock, the grandmother of J.J. Vallow, decided not to attend this day in court because she knew she didn't want to have that in her mind as a last memory of her beloved grandson. However, Larry Woodcock, on the other hand, while he was there and he was seen crying and getting very emotional as expected. And he'll have to remember JJ like that for the rest of his life, sadly. Very heartbreaking because Brandon Boudreaux had volunteered when they first discovered JJ to go identify JJ for them so that they didn't have to have that image in their head for the rest of their lives. But now they all have this harsh reality burned in their brain. If you follow this case, then you know that Nate Eaton, a reporter at East Idaho News, has been on this story since the beginning. It was a local story. He was also in court giving us updates through Twitter and other sources. He did a video update later that night on what he saw that day. And there's no doubt in my mind that these pictures would definitely eat through their heart shields. He was struggling to get those images out of his mind, and he was even mustering up several tears as he was doing this live video. Nate said that this was probably one of the worst days for everybody in court, including the defense. One of the other witnesses I want to talk about is Melanie Gibb, and we will do that on the next upload. So I'm sending my love out to the families and victims involved with this case because they still have weeks to go of this very heartbreaking and harsh trial. But on the good side of this, you're closer to victory. I want to say thank you to my Patreons who have been supporting me, who enjoy my work, and thank you to all the subscribers who have liked, commented, and been so supportive. Most of all, I want to send big hugs to my subscribers. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all you do.